So we always have eggs. I've always got a lot of eggs. That is like my go-to breakfast. So we've got, we got a couple dozen here, cage-free. We're polite to the chickens.
All right, we're gonna break down Alan Ritchson's diet. Now we're gonna talk about some things that I would possibly tweak a little bit. He's got a pretty good setup though. Like all in all, I think there's just some things there that we could twist and turn and make a little bit better. So the idea of doing these kinds of videos, I am not the kind of person that does a reaction video and rips people apart. I want to find the positive, and he's doing a lot of good things. He's got this emphasis on protein and everything like that. But there's some things that we can fine tune here. So getting right into it, just so you know, with the eggs, cage-free practically doesn't mean anything these days. You really want to be going for free range, because free range means they're actually out on a pasture or at least have a defined amount of space that they need by regulation. Cage-free could just mean that they're in a very small confined area, right? So you do have to kind of look for that. Anyhow, let's go ahead and let's see what Alan eats in a day and what his fridge looks like. And full disclaimer, I have worked with Alan. I have done some nutrition work for him before. But this is a video from before I ever worked with him, so it's a good way for me to kind of show, here's some tweaks that I would make. Before we get too far into the weeds with Alan's diet, I put a link down below for one of our sponsors, Seed Daily Synbiotic, DSO1. Very, very cool stuff. It's literally the only probiotic that I recommend at all, the only probiotic, because most of them are garbage. These guys publish their own clinical research. They do the actual science themselves. They really do pay attention to this stuff. And their technology is very interesting. So if you're looking for a probiotic to kind of help shift your gut microbiome a little bit of a different way, or you're starting to make these changes and you need some help, DSO1 from Seed, their Synbiotic, is very powerful. And that is a 25% off discount link. So you save 25% off your full DSO1 Daily Synbiotic. So highly recommend them. That link, top line of the description, underneath this video.
From what I've been told, you can't have too much fruit, so I think it's a safe one.
Okay, so you can have too much fruit, it's just hard. I mean, so when it comes down to, it's like if you were having a bunch of fruit juice, you'd be having a lot of fructose, right? We can only handle so much fructose in a given day. It does vary depending on the size of a person's liver, basically how big that person is. We can hold X amount of fructose, usually like 50 to 100 grams of fructose before you're having start to spill over and cause potential issues. But a lot of people will be concerned with fructose and fatty liver disease because some of that's talked about. For most people, that's not a concern when it's coming from actual fruit. So for the most part, Alan is right here. But that being said, it's not like you want to consistently be eating fruit all day and displace other things. So let's see what else he talks about.
I eat about every hour. I don't know if they're like full meals, probably like 4 full meals, Let me show you what a day of eating for me really looks like. This is the God's honest truth, right?
Okay, I'm gonna stop him right there. One of the funniest studies that I had ever read was one that looked at basically different countries in Europe compared to the United States. Countries in Europe, there were very clear patterns of when they would eat, right? So there was breakfast, lunch, dinner, there was just clear patterns, where in the United States, there was no pattern whatsoever. The only thing that they could find in America was that we don't eat between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. pretty much. So other than that, there was no recognizable pattern because we consume constantly. Now with someone that is a brick house like Alan, it's a little bit different. He's got the metabolic rate to be able to handle that. But from a fat loss perspective, I would definitely recommend having periods of time between meals. It does not have to be fasting at all, but fractal eating is what we call it. So where you're giving yourself a period of time between meals for glucagon levels to come back up. So basically insulin levels will come back down after a meal and glucagon will come up. And when insulin drops and glucagon goes up, you'll get a subsequent increase in what's called hormone sensitive lipase, some of these other catecholamines that'll allow you to start the lipolysis and fat oxidation process. So if you're trying to build muscle while staying lean, I would recommend maybe take these significant gaps in between meals, or not even significant, but clear and defined. Now he's gonna walk us through a day. Let's check it out.
This is my breakfast. Pre-made packs of oatmeal. I like a little variety in my life. So I'll take the apples and cinnamon, or my favorite, which I'm almost out of and it's a little scary, the maple and brown sugar. I put it in the microwave for the perfect 27 seconds. I'm a little obsessive. Doesn't want to be mushy, don't want to be too hot. 27 seconds, 2 packs. That's my breakfast.
Okay. Now, I'm sure for the context of this interview, he's leaving some things out because he already talked about him starting the day with eggs, right? One thing that I would almost always recommend is no matter what, if you're having the carbohydrates coming into the equation, a mixed meal is always best. And that is not just Thomas DeLauer, low carb zealot talking. That's lots of people. Okay, Dr. Mike Israetel, Dr. Andy Galpin, people that I respect, people that a lot of people respect. And the point is that you're kind of countering some of the high glucose spike, right? One suggestion that I would make with Alan and this breakfast, switch to regular gluten-free oats, okay? Here's why. The instant oats are usually additionally processed. They have additional garbage in them, but they also have a higher glycemic spike. And if you're not mixing that with a protein, you're gonna have a really big spike, right? What I would recommend is, hey, switch to like a gluten-free oats and try making them as overnight oats. Put them in the fridge. Make it the night before, put it in the fridge, and then you're getting a really cool effect. You're getting a resistant starch out of it. So you've turned that oatmeal into a resistant starch that A, is going to have a significantly lower glycemic effect, but it's also going to have a powerful impact when it comes down to the microbiome, because some of those starches now become indigestible and can only be broken down through feeding and cross-feeding of the microbes in our gut. So therefore actually contributing to a more diverse microbiome, which has downstream effects on fat loss and a number of other things, of course, independent of just pure gut health. So I'm not opposed to oatmeal. I know there's people out there that are very anti-oatmeal. I'm not one of them. I think in moderation, I can understand why there could be some concerns with the processing, but I just think if you just go whole grain, you go real and try to get the gluten-free ones and make them resistant whenever you can, that's a win.
Here's my lunch. This is what I do for lunch. I'm gonna show you what I do. Let me open this guy. Here, I'll open it like this. Okay, you take some cheese. I take 2 pieces of Swiss. You don't want to overdo it. You're not eating a cheese taco, you're eating a meat cheese taco. You take some turkey. You do one little, you don't want to overdo it, so just one little plop or 2. There we go. One little stripe of mustard. The cheese is the bread. So you got your little flavor in the middle, you got your protein, and you got your meat and cheese taco. I could eat 50 of these.
All right, I'm all for the meat cheese taco thing, but I think that we need to put more emphasis on the meat, a little less emphasis on the cheese. Or don't be afraid to go with like a slightly lower fat cheese. Here's the thing. If you're not doing like a lower carb ketogenic diet where you're like trying to drive fats up a little bit, I'd be concerned that like if you're, say you're gonna eat 50 of them, I know you're not literally gonna eat 50, but upon talking to Alan, I know he can eat a lot of these, right? So if you're putting down like 50, 60 grams of fat in one sitting, fat does store easier as fat. I hate to break that to people, but it is true, okay? It is harder for carbohydrates to literally turn into fat. Granted, carbohydrates can inhibit insulin, it can cause insulin, which can inhibit lipolysis, which can certainly cause some fat accumulation. Molecularly, fats store as fat easier than carbs. Carbs have to go through multiple steps, about 7 different steps of different mechanisms, different enzymatic actions. So what I would suggest here is reduce the cheese, double the meat. But also, okay, especially Alan, like I know that you're making decent money, you could probably get some higher quality meat, right? So with the deli meat, even if you're not making crazy good money, go for like the Applegate Farm stuff, which is usually not having any preservatives, no sodium benzoate. That stuff is pretty much just meat and salt. Sometimes there's like a rosemary in there. Like it's really no different. Just because it's a cold cut doesn't mean it's bad. So what he's eating there, I am a huge fan of. The mayonnaise, brother. Okay, we got to talk about mayonnaise here. So that's the one thing I'm like, I don't care if it's soybean oil. I don't care if it's seed oil. I don't really care. What I do care is that oils oxidize on the shelves. And if you were a finely tuned machine and you're really trying to say, hey, I want to take care of my cellular health, I personally feel that we should be opting for a more stable oil. So go with like a Primal Kitchen brand, sort of like avocado oil mayonnaise or something like that, right? Those are the ones that are be more stable monounsaturated fats versus a polyunsaturated fat that gets denatured and broken down and goes through lipid peroxidation sheerly by being outside in the just room temperature, even if it's in a dark container. So like that Best Foods mayonnaise, I'm just like, no, let's go with the better quality stuff. Chosen Foods, Primal Kitchen, something that doesn't have soybean oil garbage in it. Mustard, go all the way. I get creative. I'll do Dijon, I'll do Stone Ground, but I think this is a great strategy. We just need to reduce that fat intake a little bit and increase the protein.
Dinner is good. This is my wife's lovely homemade turkey meatloaf. Very lean, tons of protein. Sometimes we'll have some mashed potatoes in it if I need a little carbs. And we have some greens, like salad or green beans.
Okay, cool. I'm no issues with that whatsoever. As a matter of fact, like meatloaf is something that I forgot about for a while. We used to make meatloaf all the time because we could make it with like 96% lean beef. We'd use like maybe almond flour instead of breadcrumbs, or we'd use like gluten-free option. We're gluten-free in my house. So, hey, that's a great concept. I noticed that he has some carbohydrates stacked towards the end of the day, and it's a good point to mention. I know he has his carbohydrate breakfast. I'm personally a fan of keeping the carbs lower in the morning and tapering or increasing the carbs up as the day goes on, because here's why. I go higher calorie breakfast, lower calorie lunch, and lower calorie dinner. Fats have 9 calories per gram. Carbs have 4 calories per gram. So I can start the day with a similar volume of food in fats and get a dense amount of calories. I can keep roughly the same volume of food, but switch out some of the fats for carbs as the day goes on. And by the time I'm having dinner, if I'm carb and protein based and lower fat, I'm having the same amount of volume of food with roughly 1/3 less calories by cutting out the fats. And the carbohydrates can actually influence my sleep positively. But I do not eat my carbohydrates within a couple hours of bedtime. I try to eat them sooner. Anyway, let's hear what else he has to say.
My diet changes depending on like where I'm at in my jobs. You know, like Reacher, I play Reacher. Reacher's got to be big so I can bulk. I call it bulking constantly, so I just eat whatever I want. And I do work out 5 days a week, so I think I can get away with a lot of it.
All right, let's talk real quick on the bulking thing. There's a couple things you want to pay attention to. Calories are not as high on the hierarchy of building muscle as people think. Number one hierarchy on the hierarchy, strength training. The strongest stimulus to build muscle comes from the actual physical stimulus of training. Period. Next up is protein. Protein in and of itself will build muscle even without stimulus, mechanical stimulus. Not as much, but stimulus mechanically, protein, then somewhere further down, we have calories. Okay, you can still build muscle in a caloric deficit, albeit easier in a surplus. You don't need to emphasize calories up here. It doesn't need to be number one, protect my gains with calories, then protein, then strength training. No. Other way around. Strength training, protein, then if it all falls into place, get enough calories, maybe a slight surplus, but more importantly, surplus of protein to a certain degree.
If I'm not playing Reacher, which is, the other half of the year, I can't be so big usually. I limit the carbs. I try to cut back on the sugar because I eat cookies every day. Cookie dough every day, our secret. But yeah, I try to limit the carbs and the cheese. So if I do that, I'm good. I can get away with with a lot more.
He's actually got it down. Like he knows, like if he needs to trim down, cut out the cheese because it's caloric, right? Obviously, that's a very simple one. And then I've worked with a fair number of Hollywood types. I live in Southern California, so they come across my desk a lot. And I don't do a lot of coaching and stuff like that, but I do help a number of people. And that is pretty common theme, not necessarily from me, but from what I see in the industry. Like when they need to cut weight fast, they do cut carbs. And I know that is not always what the world wants to hear. And I know that there are many different ways to skin this and go about it. So I'm not saying it's the only way by any stretch of imagination. But I will say about 8 out of 10 Hollywood types that I have worked with, that is their usual go-to and what works for them to drop weight fast. I like that Alan appreciates just the sugar aspect. Some of the things that I've talked with him about, and at some point I'll probably try to get him on the channel and we'll just talk about this. But carbohydrates are fine. We just need to have them timed in a certain way based on what you're doing, and we just need to keep them at a certain level, or not at a certain level. That's neither here nor there right now. But the biggest lever he's probably pulling, less than the carbs, is probably actually just reducing the cheese. And I love cheese. So by the way, his Swiss cheese option is good. Lower sodium option, but it's also typically it's going to have a higher level of conjugated linoleic acid, higher quality fat content in Swiss cheese. Splitting hairs really, but let's see what else we got.
What would we never see in your fridge?
Anything vegan? Vegan people are like, it's almost like a real cookie. And you're like, no, why do you have to compare it? I'll just have the real cookie. I'm not judging you if you're vegan, but I ain't eating that. You know what I'm saying?
Got to give a thoughtful acknowledgement here. Again, the same way, I don't care what someone chooses to eat, but it is really disappointing when I sit down in a restaurant and I see something really, really good and I want it. And then I go to order it and I'm like, oh, that wasn't chicken. That was chicken, like CHIK''N. And I've had that happen where I've ordered a chicken Caesar salad that came to me and I'm like, this chicken feels like spongy. It feels dissolving in my mouth. What is happening here? So it's kind of the same thing. If you want to eat fake chicken, just eat chicken. Or if you don't want to eat chicken, don't eat chicken. Don't eat fake chicken. Anyway.
I like the 40 grams, the muscle milk.
Muscle milk, I'm not gonna bag on muscle milk. That is mainly a caseinate protein. I haven't looked at the back of a muscle milk in a really long time, so I can't even tell you what like emulsifiers and stuff they have in it, so I'm not gonna go there. But bottom line is it is a casein protein. So it is better to have like before bed than it is earlier in the day. I would opt for just like a whey protein at that rate.
The snacks are kind of the hardest thing for me. So I do like a lot of cottage cheese. I do a lot of yogurt. I also do a lot of string cheese. I have the worst diet. People, nutritionists around the world, their heads are falling off right now.
You know, he's kind of self-deprecating. It's funny because when I first talked to him about this stuff too, it was like, yeah, like your diet's not that bad. Like I think you just have these things that are like massive amounts of cookies he talks about and sugary stuff. And like, yeah, I mean, whatever, dude. You're active, you're crazy, you're doing crazy stuff. Like, it's all good. I think you're 99th percentile, like, or top 1 percentile, however you want to put it, that statistic, of people that are choosing good snacks. Like, you're choosing yogurt and you're choosing cottage cheese and string cheese. I'd say that's a pretty good thing, right? Cottage cheese, I would opt for like the Good Culture brand cottage cheese. Greek yogurt, I know it has some nastiness in it that people may not like, but like those Oikos higher protein yogurts that have some whey protein in them, those are great. Like my go-to snack is very similar to that. I will have like a 0% Faya Greek yogurt or an organic Greek yogurt. I'll put a scoop of whey protein isolate in it, and that is an amazing snack. So he's on the right track here.
This is my coffee. My coffee is a 5-hour energy, so it's efficient, it's delicious. Yeah, you pop one of these in the morning, good as gold.
All right, 5-hour energy. I mean, again, I'm not looking at one right now. I know it's got like sodium benzoate, it's got some preservatives and stuff in it. Just FYI, it's kind of interesting to note that I know coffee might not always be time conducive, but coffee is very rich in antioxidants, chlorogenic acid. Fun fact, most Americans, this is an actual fact, the largest concentration of antioxidants that they get in a day is usually coming from their cup of coffee. So just FYI, coffee, tea. Now, if I had my hands on like what Alan could do every day, I would probably switch him to like a concentrated matcha green tea or something. I was like, just make, in fact, I think I might have even mentioned this to them on the phone, is like having matcha. Like you don't want to do coffee, like at least get some antioxidants from like a matcha shot or something. I don't have anything super negative to say about 5-hour energy. I just feel like it's just concentrated caffeine and you could probably get more out of it if you made some other like better, let's call it less processed choices.
My go-to protein shake, it's ice, almond milk, a ton of protein powder. Sometimes I'll do a banana, but usually I go fruitless. I try to limit the sugar. 3 giant handfuls of spinach. I do peanut butter, cacao for a little depth of flavor, and avocado. So I get the fats in there. But sometimes I put oats in there if I want like a little extra.
Okay, I would say let's ditch the extra fats, right? So if you got the avocado in there, I'm cool with that. Maybe let's ditch the almond butter or peanut butter. Let's like go for the good monounsaturated fats out of that avocado. Okay, like fair game. Love the idea of loads of protein in there. And I like the idea that you have, you know, some fruit sometime making its way in there. Now the spinach. Here's the concern that I have. I recently released a video of an interview that I did with Dr. Jacob Torres. He is a University of California, Santa Barbara kidney researcher, and he's quite an expert in the world of oxalates, oxalic acid. Oxalates are, like when you eat spinach, you know how it's got that grittiness. That grittiness is not actually in the spinach. What that grittiness is oxalate crystals or oxalate binding to calcium in your mouth, forming crystals. These same crystals are what ultimately form in the kidneys. They can form in the joints all over the body, and they're like little microscopic razor blades that can cause problems. And this is not fear-mongering. Oxalic acid, oxalates are very real. And I'm not saying don't ever eat spinach. Make that super, 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 super clear. I want you to get your greens in. I love vegetables. I love greens. Okay. But we might not be designed to be consuming ridiculous amounts of oxalates because they're very hard for our body to clear, and they are clearly damaging to the kidneys. And kidney researchers, this is not new research. It's so easy to want to point a finger at someone and say, he's bashing spinach, so he's a bad person. I'm not bashing spinach, I'm being real, okay? High amounts of almonds can do the same thing. What I suggest you do is sprout your almonds. That can help break it down a little bit more, but more so just opt for things that are lower oxalate. So go for arugula. arugula is actually more nutrient dense than spinach in many ways, and it doesn't have the oxalates. Also, baby kale isn't as bad as, say, regular kale. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. So I just would say, hey, I know spinach is great. I know you like it. I know it's good, but you're not getting the juice out of that squeeze that you think you're getting.
These are trace mineral drops, so these are all natural minerals and performance electrolytes. Swear to you, this has saved my life because when I'm working out 5 days a week, using heavy weights all the time, your body never has a chance to recover. You're never 100%. I suffered from full body, whole system-wide muscle cramps. In fact, the other day, I did some push-ups, and during the push-ups, I started to cramp up. I came up and I took these. I waited 15 minutes. Cramps were gone.
So cramping is somewhat bio-individual in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, there's an electrolyte issue, there's metabolic issues, different things that come into play. I suffer from cramps too. Like, it's something that I've been dealing with for a very long time. I've learned how to kind of manage things. So Alan, quick tip. Taurine is very effective at helping cramps preemptively. So proactively, almost prophylactically, take 1 to 3 grams of creatine prior to your workouts. You probably won't cramp. Secondly, if you're cramping during a workout, it is a potassium issue. Okay, that's much more potassium related. If you're cramping at night or after the workout significantly, like leg cramps at night, magnesium related. Trace minerals probably aren't helping you a ton with that because trace minerals are trace minerals. The regular electrolytes you're talking about might be helping you with that. And you're about right, 10, 15 minutes after doing it, you'll start to have that effect. What I would recommend for you is not necessarily adding more water in. Sometimes you're overhydrating. So check yourself on how much water you're drinking. Try to have electrolytes first thing in the morning so your body's a little bit more stabilized to that. And also try different forms of electrolytes. One that's more potassium-based during your workout, one that's more magnesium-based maybe later on throughout the day. Trace minerals are definitely great too.
What I would love to find in my life is a balance where I kind of eat healthy and then don't have to work quite as hard, but I'm not there yet. I like cookie dough too much.
Okay, what he's referring to here ultimately is an energy balance thing. I know that there are people that watch my channel, and trust me, I firmly believe part of this too. It's not just calories in, calories out, but there's a lot of things that influence those things. And when he's eating junk food, he's gonna have to outwork that. Granted, he's got the muscle mass where the workout is a stimulus for what might happen the rest of the day in terms of incinerating calories. But one of the things that you can simply do, and we've kind of talked about this anyway, is reducing your eating window. Putting yourself manually into a deficit by shrinking the amount of time that you have to eat. So fast through the mornings a couple days a week, fast in the evenings a couple days a week. Find something like that so that you just have less time to do the damage. A guy like this is hardwired to be able to be off and on. So give yourself a period where you're on, and that's when you can eat. And then a period yourself where you're off, or vice versa. You're off when you're allowed to eat, right? And as long as those basic protein needs are met, I'm cool with you having flexibility. Let's just do what we need to do so you don't have to torture yourself, because as you get older and you get into your 40s and 50s, you won't be able to outrun your bad diet. You won't be able to outwork a bad diet. It's just, that's gonna come too hard, too much of a cost on your joints and your body, your mental health, your energy, right? So it's gonna make more sense to back off things a little bit and say, hey, maybe I can control my diet 30% more so I can give it 30% less in the gym. As far as just pouring the guts out on the table. I'm all about working hard, and you should continue to work hard, but you shouldn't have to just destroy yourself in the gym.
Anyway, speaking of eating crap and needing to work it off, we should go hit the gym.
All in all, I'm impressed with Alan's protocol. I know this doesn't show everything that he's doing, but I can tell you from talking to the guy that he's got a pretty straight up plan already. Like, he's not as bad as he kind of says in this self-deprecating sort of attitude. So in a lot of these that I've looked at with different people, his is one of the better ones. He's got the foundation there, and with those little tweaks, they could make a huge difference. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.